featuring Stephanie Bell, news director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you. Get ready, pal.
And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
The timeline, again, just to underscore, so notable that every time the Hunter Biden situation and the corruption makes the headlines, an indictment seems to drop. June, July, August.
But I can't help but notice the calendar here. Every one of these indictments that's come down, or the superseding indictments from Jack Smith, has always followed very bad news for Joe Biden. Whether it is the bribery allegation contained in the FBI's FD 1023 form, the next day, the Mar-a-Lago indictments dropped. It's the collapse of the plea deal for Hunter Biden in that courtroom. The next day, the superseding indictment is dropped. And then this week, we get Devin Archer's testimony about Hunter Biden and the Biden family's finances. The next day, you get the January 6th case. It's always the next day. And I think people look at that and go, well, that can't be a coincidence.
Oh, come on. That's just Fox News talking, John, isn't it? That's not true. I wonder, do we need to run that through the Ministry of Truth? That can't be true.
Fact check.
Okay, let's do it. Man, we're 38 seconds into the show, Hannah. We're already doing a fact check on the show this morning. So Fox saying, well, what about all those times that whenever there was bad news for Trump the next day, or bad news for Hunter and Joe the next day, there's even worse news for Trump? Let's look at the calendar. June 7th, FBI releases documents to Congress alleging the Bidens took a $10 million bribe from Burisma. And then what happened on June the 8th? Jack Smith indicts Trump, Mar-a-Lago documents case. Remember, that's Jack Smith's job. July 26th, Hunter Biden goes to court, rejects sweetheart plea deal after it was revealed the Department of Justice tried to give him blanket immunity from future prosecutions. One day later,
July 27th, Jack Smith adds more charges for Trump in the Mar-a-Lago case.
July 31st, Hunter Biden's former business partner testifies to Congress that Joe Biden was on over 20 calls with his son's business partners and that Burisma execs pressured them to fire the prosecutor. The next day,
the third indictment, the January 6th indictment.
John, you're a news guy. We can't deny this, can we? I mean, these are facts.
Well, it's just timing.
It's just coincidental.
It's kind of like being a comedian, all about the timing.
It's all about timing. And the timing is getting even more interesting. Tucker, on his show's called Tucker on Twitter.
But now they changed their name. Oh, no, I didn't even think about that.
X. Yeah.
Tucker on X.
Yeah. I don't like that.
That sounds dirty.
I still call it Twitter.
I don't know of anybody that's calling it X except for Elon.
Yeah.
Right. And right now, I think it's still on twitter.com. And I mean, think about it. Like, if you start typing an X into the search bar.
Yeah, no kidding.
They can't, I mean,
Careful.
Like Hannah said, watch where it takes you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Here's the one thing I do like about the evolution of Twitter to X. Like when I get notifications on my phone that X looks cooler than a little bird. That's my big takeaway.
You think it looks cooler?
Yeah.
I don't.
I think it's...
And there's nothing... It's not tweets anymore. It's like... X's.
Oh, I've got some X's. I've done a few of those.
You and Taylor Swift. I don't know, but I do feel bad for Tucker. What's his he totally named his show. Has he said anything about it?
I don't know.
Has anyone pointed that out?
I'm wondering if he's assuming that the X is going to go away. Kind of like the way of remember New Coke Houseworth back in 1985.
Oh my God. Yeah, and the chair. I knew somebody was going to get fired because the new chairman of the Coke. The company said somebody made an asinine decision. I thought, goodness, and it was very, very controversial.
We've got this thing that's worked for like 100 years. It's the top-selling cola in the world and in the United States, and it's worked, and it has been forever. Let's do something different.
And they changed it, and my God, it produced an outcry.
Elon can snap his fingers and change the name of an entire social media platform in 2 seconds, yet here we are almost a year into Wake Up Mid-Missouri, and Facebook still won't let us change our page name.
Come on, son! What are you doing?
It's so bad. But also, he put that big glowing X up on his building, and then he had to take it. He took it. It came down within, 48 hours?
Yeah.
I wonder if he's trolling because he knows how bad it is.
So he is situated basically downtown San Fran, adorns the San Francisco skyline. He puts up a big lighted up X, and apparently San Francisco, I would like to say, It's because they don't like him because he's a conservative. In San Francisco, they don't want cops and they want homeless people and they want you to be able to steal as you want to with no consequence. So you get a conservative, puts a big old X up on the building. They're saying, well, you had to get permission to do this first. Probably some viability to that.
There was someone that was like, I can't watch my TV. It's too bright. And they took it down. I think it was violating their zoning or something, but
it was keeping the hookers awake.
Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. So I'll start here. Really big things. Trump is in court this morning, and then rain and flash flooding. We are going to talk about gas prices, man, up 3 cents overnight. They've been skyrocketing. This Fitch credit rating. The Dow had been on a winning streak that we had not seen. Stephanie was 3 years old the last time the Dow saw a winning streak like we had.
That was a long time ago.
Hey.
She's in her 40s now.
No, I'm not.
Not?
You're like a few days shy of it.
When do you turn 40?
In a while.
In a while.
It's my birthday month. Where are my gifts?
Happy birthday.
Well, I'm going to give you one from Devin Archer and Tucker Carlson. You got to hear what happened on Tucker Carlson's Tucker on X or on Twitter the other day. So you've got that Aaron Hedlund, chief economist with Show Me Institute. He's going to be joining us 6:35 in this Fitch credit rating thing. What does that mean? Coming up 7:35, former Jefferson City Mayor Tom Rackers is going to be joining us on why he is voting no on that library tax. We had the library folks on last week saying here's why you should vote for it. He's going to be telling us why he is not voting for it. Tobler, host Tobler Show weekdays 4 to 6, hanging out with us 8-10. We do have some significant flooding, and it's in areas that are typically affected, so you probably already know, but it's worth like up to 7 inches of rain in some of our mid-Missouri towns.
Well, Chamois right now, Branden, which is an Osage County small town, river town, still has some rail presence. They have got 6 to 7 inches of rain on the ground. New Bloomfield as well. Now, I don't have numbers for Hartsburg yet. I've been on the phone with National Weather Service meteorologist Kevin Deich. So if someone's in Hartsburg or let's say in that area, maybe Holt Summit, you've got a rain gauge, I'd like to hear. If somebody could text us, that would be great. Flooding right now. 4 warnings are in effect, and they are in effect till 7:35. Osage, Callaway, Southern Boone, Montauk. Montauk did have a tornado warning last night, went off at 8:30. Radar indicated a tornado near High Point, no damage, but that is our situation right now. The ground is completely saturated.
That's producer Hannah. Hannah had to pack up the family and bolt last night.
I had literally just climbed into bed and gotten the covers all tucked up under my chin. And then we hear the sirens go off. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
About 8:30.
The timing just wasn't convenient for me. That's right. I was ready to go to sleep.
Mother Nature, can we put this off until 3 in the morning when I wake up? And
it wasn't convenient for the folks at the fair either. I mean, it was torrential rain in Jersey.
Pulled the plug on the Cole County Fair.
Yeah. The Cole County Fair, I've never seen a year where the weather's impacted it this much. It's every night. And tonight, maybe some dry time, but yes, it has. Now, if I want to make one other quick point. Columbia officially 1.41 inches of rain at the airport. I've told people this. I even told the Weather Service many times. The rain.
Here I go. This is why Brian is Brian, and that's why he's a journalist. Been doing it 30 years here in Mid-Missouri.
I wish I had $1 for every time I've heard him tell this story this week.
Yes, but I know the number is low. They're going with 1.41 inches of rain in Columbia. Jessica Hafner at KMIZ, at her house, 2.5 inches. It is probably somewhere between, let's say, 1.4. The rain gauge, it's COU out at the airport, is on the side of a building, and a lot of times it doesn't catch everything. So I do believe that number is low. There's no question in my mind, but that's the official number that they have.
Jefferson City Memorial Airport was reporting 2.5 inches a couple hours ago.
And we're talking they're about 10 miles away from each other.
Like those citizens who went out and filled the potholes themselves? I feel like Brian Hauser should just go out and we should buy him a rain gauge and you should just install your own.
Well, unfortunately, the NWS, that's their official gauge, so they have to do it. But I believe it used to be out at Channel 8, and it would probably be a better location. For whatever reason, they've always been low, and they're low on snow totals, too.
Donovan's in Russellville. Yeah. He says almost 4 inches of rain. Wow. So I love when you tell the story. So Russellville, almost 4 inches, when you tell the story about the rain gauge being on the side of the building. This story, I think you should tell more often.
Pretty interesting. I hit one time.
Yeah. Well, we've never seen a live
What's
armadillo.
that sound like exactly?
Oh, terrible.
Can you?
It sounded like artillery shells were being fired off under my car.
Oh.
I woke everybody up at the Capitol Plaza Hotel in Jefferson City when I hit that thing. It was in 2020. National Guard was staying there. So, yeah, it was very embarrassing. I hit an armadillo, and I could not get back to my home. I actually had to park, and that's the closest I could get. Thankfully, I didn't get stuck on the road. I had to park at Capitol Plaza Hotel.
How was the armadillo?
It died, and it got stuck under my car. It was.
No, you were dragging it.
Yeah, it was.
Did it leave ruts there on Missouri Boulevard?
It was. Well, I was on Highway 50, and there was no shoulder. That's the problem. There was no shoulder, so I couldn't. I had to continue to go. But yeah, it probably killed instantly, I would say.
I was out running some errands yesterday in Jefferson City in a local business, and I'll say thanks to listener Ann, who confirmed. She said, now, I have seen a live armadillo. Wow. Because there was a debate yesterday on who's seen a live armadillo and not.
Brandon was trying to theorize that somebody was dumping dead armadillos on the side of our roads.
Because they're not real. They're just government spy robots.
I heard from 3 people yesterday. Adam Kinzer, service master, the master of disaster. He texted me. I've got a good friend named Christy. She texted and said, we had an armadillo. We had to call animal control. They couldn't catch it because that thing was so fast. And she says, and I think animal control, frankly, was a little afraid of it. And
well, it gives you leprosy, right? Is that what? It gives you something.
I think so, because Brian hit one and it made his engine fall off. Welcome into the show. Stephanie Pell is here.
Good morning.
Engine fall off, ladies and gentlemen.
There's John Marsh, man.
Yep.
Another text, 874-9390. Sean, quarter-size hail, JC Fairgrounds area. Roger, regarding rain gauges, they are always low at the airport. The rain gauge always low at the airport because it's always sunny in southern Boone County. Aww. Stephanie should confirm that.
Did you see James' text? He said, I used to work with a guy who bought everyone a rain gauge for Christmas so we could all talk about the weather.
Aww.
All right, we do that. So yesterday, Tucker on Twitter, he's interviewing Devin Archer. There is a letter apparently from Joe Biden that Devin Archer shared with Tucker. That's one of the things that we're going to be covering this morning. Also getting ready for the daily DC Rundown.
Well, people keep referring to Donald Trump as Teflon Don, but somebody else also needs that name.
of the economy over the next 3 years. That's in their report, as well as they're looking at this game of economic chicken over and over and over again that the White House plays with Congress over the debt ceiling.
All right, coming up 6:35, Aaron Hedlund, chief economist, Show Me Institute, going to be talking about we had a big winning streak on the Dow. Gas prices are up. What does this mean for you? That's coming up 6:35. In Bidenomics, that's what's getting us into today's Daily DC. Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
Well, and our economy may be in the toilet, but we're still handing out money left. What is up with this music?
Sorry.
Left and right.
Can I, this morning I said, Hannah, I said, Trump's in court today. It's raining. We've got some flash flood stuff. 7 inches of rain.
This music fits with the color of the sky.
Right.
It's been like red all morning.
And so, I don't know, we just want to turn things upside down a little bit this morning. Didn't mean to catch you off guard.
It was slick, though, that you played the normal music bed in the commercial break to throw Stephanie off.
I duped her.
Yeah.
Shame on you. All right. Well, okay. So our economy is in the toilet. Wisconsin is getting, come on now, is getting $1 billion $1 billion in federal money to expand their high-speed internet access. And as part of that, Kamala Harris is visiting Wisconsin Thursday. She's actually been there 4 times since becoming. Since becoming the vice president. And you might ask, why is she going to Wisconsin so often? Well, Biden won Wisconsin by just under 21,000 votes. Of course, he had flipped it because it had previously gone for Donald Trump. 4 of the past 6 presidential elections in Wisconsin have been decided by less than a percentage point. So she is out on an official, quote-unquote, visit to Wisconsin to tout all the money that they're getting from Biden and the federal government.
I'm detecting your facetiousness, dude.
Yeah.
You hear it, John? I think it's
picking up on it big time.
I think you're not saying it's an official visit about broadband or whatever.
Well, she's not coming to Missouri. I think that ship's already sailed. All right, on the Republican side, the Republicans are changing. Well, they're announcing the requirements for the second debate. So if you didn't get in on the Doug Burgum paid gift card thing, there might be more hope in your future to make for a side hustle with the Republican candidates. So if you recall, I think you needed 1% in national polls to get into this August 23rd debate in Milwaukee. Well, the second debate is going to be September 27th in California, and the stakes are higher. You will need at least 3% in 2 national polls or 3% in 1 national poll, as well as 2 polls from the first 4 early voting states. So Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. You also had to have 40,000 unique voters to get into the first debate. Now you're going to have 50,000 unique voters. They also, I think this is interesting, there's like a geographic distribution requirement, so you can't just get all the donors from your own state. 200 of your donors have to come from 20 states or territories.
Man, they're putting a lot of stuff. What if we just hey, y'all show up, all 10 of you, or 20, however many of you's running, and then we're going to pick 5. We're just going to spin the wheel. We're going to pick 5, y'all. You 5 get on the stage, and then Brett Baer from Fox will ask some questions, and we'll see how that goes.
It should be like single elimination. You should get one question. It should be like American Idol. Vote. One person goes off the stage, and then it's like a bracket or something. I like this.
John, how about the Gong Show?
Man, you took the words out of my mouth.
I like this. Well, 2 hopefuls, Mike Pence and Asa Hutchinson, are still trying to get on that first stage. They've met the polling requirement, but they don't have that donor requirement, so they need to come up with the gift card thing pretty quickly here. They're running out of time. Also, Teflon Ken, like Teflon Don, Ken Paxton apparently is awaiting an impeachment trial, but should be in court today because he was indicted on felony charges of defrauding investors in a tech startup before he even got elected, essentially, or right after he got elected. So he's got a whole bunch of troubles.
He's under fire. How's your retirement?
America is under huge pressure, and we know that, and the American people know that. Just ask them. Just ask them. I mean, when they go to the grocery store, it's a gut punch. It's a gut punch.
Man, isn't that a really good way of putting it? Because he's talking about your personal emotion. When you go, like when I went and bought some lunch meat a couple weeks ago, and it was $17 a pound for stuff that I typically pay. I pay $8 a pound for Black Forest ham. $17 a pound. It was a punch, maybe not to the gut. It was more like a kick to the groin.
But then you look at your bag and it's so puny, and you're like, I paid $60 for one sack of groceries.
So he's talking about that feeling.
It's horrible.
That reality. These are not conservative talking points. This is affecting people. It's affecting Stephanie. It's affecting me. Poor Hannah. Welcome. We want to bring in Aaron Hedlund real quick, chief economist with the Show Me Institute from 2020 to 2021, chief domestic economist, senior advisor at the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Matter of fact, every Friday there's a group called Columbia Pachyderms. They get together at Dickey's Barbecue on Forum, and every week different speaker. Tomorrow noon it is going to be Aaron Hedlund. I want to ask about looking forward if there's some hope for us. But let's start with this Fitch credit rating, downgrading our credit rating. What does that mean to somebody right now driving to work in the pouring rain? Hello?
Yeah, there?
We're here.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
All right. The climate change, it's affecting our phones this morning. Climate change, we can blame everything on. Fitch credit rating, somebody driving to work this morning. Why should we be interested in this downgrade in the United States of America's credit rating?
Yeah, Fitch is really just kind of reflecting the reality, which is that the finances of the U.S. government are way out of whack. I mean, deficits have gone up tremendously over the past couple of years, and the economy has not been in a downturn. I mean, usually talk about moving towards a balanced budget, but even when economists talk about a balanced budget, they say, well, if we're in a recession, some kind of deficits are to be expected, but then when you're in the expansion phase, those deficits should shrink. And in fact, deficits have gone the opposite direction. They've gone up during an expansion, and we have World War II levels of debt without the World War that we're fighting. So it's really not a good situation from the standpoint of fiscal responsibility.
So you said the government's finances, in effect, aren't in order, and I'm trying to, again, if I'm, I'll use Stephanie and her family, if her family, so we're doing this vacation, and we got money for this, but we don't have this, and we're not sure what's going to happen with school supplies, even with the tax. If your personal finances ain't intact, that's a stressor on the family. Does that correlate to this as a stressor for the government and then ultimately the American folks?
Exactly. So what's happening is creditors are looking at the U.S. government and thinking it's not as safe of a bet as it has been at times in the past. So they're going to demand higher interest rates. And in fact, what we saw since the downgrade is that yields, essentially interest rates on certain types of debt, have gone up. So we actually saw mortgage rates bounce even a little bit higher because Treasury interest rates bounced higher. So that added expense really is compensate lenders for that risk, but we are also having to pay that higher interest too.
So okay, the stock market's been doing pretty good recently, right? And I looked at my quarterly, I only look quarterly because it's been pretty bad and I try to not look at it. But this last quarter I was thinking, oh, that's pretty good. And, we've got folks out there saying Bidenomics. I even heard a Missouri Democrat yesterday saying, the Biden economy is actually doing pretty good. How do you respond to folks when they say, well, my stocks are doing good, the Biden economy is doing pretty good?
Yeah, well, the first thing I look at is purchasing power. So if we want to compare, for example, the policies under the previous 4 years compared to the policies under the past couple of years, we saw median typical household income went up by about $6,000 under the pro-growth policies that were pursued previously. And we look at purchasing power of the typical family now, it's actually down a few $1,000s because of the effect of inflation. So to me, that's the biggest indictment, is the fact that purchasing power is worse. It's true that we haven't fallen off of a cliff. So the economy has been expanding at a meager rate, but it's not shrinking. So we're not currently in recession. But to have 40-year high inflation is nothing to crow about.
And some perspective there, 40-year high inflation, something that Hannah has never seen in her lifetime.
And I haven't seen in my lifetime.
This close, Steph. This close. And then, as a matter of fact, Dow had been on a winning streak, longest since Stephanie was 3 years old. Do want to get into that this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Branden Rathert, Stephanie Bell, producer Hannah Brian Houseworth, and John Marsh all hanging out with us. Our guest this morning, he is the chief economist with the Show Me Institute. He's joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Fox News and the Wall Street Journal both had the story on. I think the Wall Street Journal's headline was, while everyone else fights inflation, China deflation fears deepen. What's that mean for the global economy?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of turmoil going on. I mean, you've got certain countries like the UK that have an inflation crisis even worse than us. Then you've got China perhaps going in the opposite direction. I don't know if China's deflation is something that's going to affect the average American consumer all that much. Really, the biggest effect from China is their economy shrinking or growing, and what kind of demand are we going to get from consumers over there? And then there's also the perennial challenge, which is that China would like to replace the U.S. as the predominant economy, and not in a benign way. Right? If they were a market economy like us, then really it's a rising tide lifts all boats kind of situation. But China doesn't play by the same rules as us. So if indeed they do become the largest economy, what they want to do is rewrite the rules of the global marketplace in their favor. And if they succeed at that, that's certainly not something that's good for us. So that's all the more reason for us to return to a more robust, prosperous economy to where we are helping set the rules rather than China.
AAA tells us yesterday gas prices in Missouri on average $3.58 a gallon. This morning, $3.61 a gallon. Some of the highest prices in the entire state of Missouri happen to be Boone County, Cooper County, Morgan County, and then Cole and other surrounding counties. Obviously very high. What's happening with gas prices?
Yeah, well, this is really all part of a trend that we can go back to 2021 and look at gas prices over that 2-year period. There was a period of time when we would hear from D.C. and from the White House in particular about the Putin price hike, and kind of trying to blame all gas prices on the war in Ukraine, which is kind of ridiculous talking to attribute all of it to that, because between 2021 and February 2022, when that invasion started, gas prices had already gone up by over $1. It's true that they went up even more then in response to that war, but then they largely came back down to the gains that had already been seen during that first year. So this is really just a reflection of a very different energy policy that the country is currently pursuing. And I think it's a very damaging energy policy. It's one in which federal bureaucrats decide which types of energy are okay to use, which types of energy are not okay to use. They're trying to thrust more electric vehicles onto people, whether or not they want to have them, and make it so that producers using fossil fuels are denied access to money to invest through things like ESG, which is kind of this politicization of retirement investing. So it's all these things kind of make investment in energy less attractive, which you have less supply, you have higher prices.
And ESG, environmental and social governance, by the way, folks telling us basically anywhere off of 63, like between California and at least Columbia, $3.69 a gallon.
Now, the legislature's done a good job in the last several years of cutting taxes. And it kind of came up last session. And what we heard was, well, it's one-time money. And, there were lots of people who said, let's just return this money to the people. But the opposite side, even on the conservative side, was saying, hey, we're really uncertain about this economy. Maybe we should hang on to it. We don't really know what's going to happen in the future. With this latest debt news, how would you predict, the legislature doing any further tax cuts next session?
So predicting the legislature is very difficult.
Fair point.
For reasons that have nothing to do with Fitch's rating of the U.S. government debt. That being said, I think there's a lot of room to do further tax cuts, and really, I don't tax reform. Right? We can talk about the level of tax revenues that are going to Jefferson City, and I'm all for finding ways to limit the scope of government and therefore reduce those revenues so people can keep more of their own money. But there's also a question of how do we bring in that money? And that we really should be trying to follow the model of places like Texas, Tennessee, Florida, and states that are not maybe all the way there, but places like North Carolina and Arizona that are drastically reducing their income taxes, because higher income tax rates, those are the most discouraging of growth and jobs. and lower unemployment. So if we could move towards kind of a broader base and lower rates, that would be something to attract more people to Missouri and keep them here.
All right. Can you leave us with any hope this morning? Say, we do want to talk about facts. We want to talk about how these policies affect somebody going to work this morning, but we don't want to bum you out, man. We want you to be listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri and going to work with some kind of glimmer of hope. What kind of hope can you offer us, Dr. Hedlund?
Well, I'd actually say that part of the reason the stock market's been doing well is that so far, anyway, the economy is avoiding recession. I mean, GDP number, gross domestic product came out that showed the economy growing a little over 2%. It's not something to write home about, but it is something to alleviate some fears, at least for the time being. And I think what we're seeing is two things. Despite the bad policies that have come out of D.C. the past couple of years, number one, we're still a private sector-driven economy for the most part, and we've got a lot of ingenious entrepreneurs and workers out there hustling. And I think that's generating a lot of good economic activity. Secondly, there are a lot of states that are really on the forefront of very good policy. So actually, when you look at that GDP number, it's driven really, especially by states that are pursuing sound policies. So I think Missouri, we could be more creative. We could certainly be more at the vanguard, but I think we're doing more things right than we are wrong, and that's something to be hopeful about.
Chief Economist with the Show Me Institute, Chief Domestic Economist and Senior Advisor at the White House Council of Economic Advisors, Dr. Aaron Hedlund. Anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the big party last night of all those lightning and thunder. It was quite a show.
Pretty insane. Thank you so much, Dr. Hedlund. As a matter of fact, reports of rain. 2.29 around Eagle Knoll, 3/7, almost 4 inches of rain in Russellville. Hausworth saying he's been told that in Chamois, 7 inches of rain. That's insane.
We just heard from Rick in Jefferson City, who said over the last 2 days, 5 inches of rain at Bender Lake.
And hopefully, so we do have area flash flood watches and warnings in effect till about 10. Those should be going away. Heavy rain coming to an end later this morning. Then otherwise clouds, high only 85 tomorrow. It's going to be a feel-good Friday. We do have some more chances of rain. And if you're seeing any closures, and it's the typical places when you get flash flood, low-lying areas, but if you're seeing any of those, please let us know. 874-9390. Coming up just a few minutes from now. Here on the show, Jack Flaherty, Cardinals' best pitcher, traded away, and he left a note for Cardinals manager Oliver Marmol. The biggest topic in our business news yesterday, Marsh. Things to do while you're on vacation, straight out of
Whoa, it's 6:54.
Straight out of
the Wall Street Journal.
Number one story on the Wall Street Journal.
Well, Trump was a close second.
Trump was a close second.
All we did was give some vacation tips.
It was a great story. So how twisted up is it going to get today? It's pretty cool. We'll do that at 8:25. Stephanie's always got something actually in there that you can use that's valuable, and we'll get you a peek at those stock futures. That's coming up 8:25 this morning here on the show. And by the way, so there's a municipal vote coming up next week, August the 8th, and this has to do with a library tax. In Jefferson City. Last week we had the folks on from the library to say this is why we think you should vote for it. And you go to their website and they have a whole explainer. Coming up 7:35 this morning, former mayor of Jefferson City, Tom Rackers, he's joining us. He's going to tell us why he is going to be voting no on that library tax. Randy Tobler shows here at 8:10. I think we should look at the top stories from the Wall Street Journal again today. There's actually an interesting story why middle-aged Americans aren't going back to church. And this is something I think folks in the organized religion community, they've been looking at for a lot of years. Like, how come we're losing money, number one, but how come we can't get people to come into our building on a Sunday and sit for an hour and hear the word? And that's something they've been struggling with for a long time, and it's one of the top stories on the Wall Street Journal this morning. Jack Flaherty, one of the Cardinals' best pitchers. I don't know, John, was he traded like in the middle of the game the other night? I don't know how these things work out. Like if you're just sitting there on the bench and you're watching the game with your bros, and it's like, hey, Jack, come here for a second. And he knew it was coming. I mean, it was no surprise. Best pitcher on the Cardinals. Cardinals ain't in the playoffs. We'll send him.
Been a rough year, hasn't it?
Been a bad year for the Cardinals and the Royals.
Paul DeYoung's gone.
Paul DeYoung's gone. So anyhow, apparently in the middle of the game, so Jack gets dressed, cleans out his locker room, but before he leaves, he grabs some pen and paper and apparently writes a note and puts it in an envelope, and on the envelope he writes, Ollie. Drops it on Oliver Marmel's desk. A reporter from the Post-Dispatch, Daniel Guerrero, he gets wind of this, and he says, hey, Ollie, what was in that letter? And Oliver Marmel said, it was deeply moving and touching, but I don't want to share it. He says, because it was so personal. But he gave us the gist of what he said, and I thought that I don't know, I just thought it was really cool.
Well, and I love a handwritten note. Like I have stationery, and I whenever I receive one, I feel like it makes me feel so good
and special.
Very special, and I keep them, and so I try to remind myself, like when someone does something, I should write a handwritten note. But Marmel said it's more than just wins and losses; it's beyond the field, which is meaningful. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I love that. So to me, it says, listen, baseball, radio, attorney, firefighter, all that stuff. It's like, okay, you've got your job and you've got your profession, but I think it goes to balance, and I look at people that I surround myself with in my life, for example, and Hannah, I feel, is adamant about balance in her life.
I feel like,
well, Steph is the busiest person.
Balance is a myth.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like it's a little bit of a generational thing. I think my generation is more focused on that balance. By the way,
I said, yeah, I don't agree that balance is a myth. I said, yeah, that's Stephanie's take is what I meant to say.
I think that my generation is focusing more on finding that balance.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we're being labeled as quiet quitters for that.
Well,
you should really hear what the number one story on the Wall Street Journal is about your generation.
Great. Can't wait.
Do that at 8:25.
I'm going home.
What's more stupefying? That or this?
I did not know he was on the board of that company. I've never discussed my business or their business, my sons or daughters. I never discussed a single thing with my son about anything having to do with Ukraine. I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period.
So we know now that was a lie. We knew it then when he was saying it.
We did.
Yeah. And as Stephanie, one of the first I've heard to definitely point out the changing language from the White House on Joe and what he knew/didn't know about his kid.
Because now he's limited to just, I'm not in business. I've never been in business with my son.
And then it was, I wasn't aware that he was in. I had no idea. You didn't know your son was on the board of Burisma. You didn't know what your kid was doing. Come on, man.
Which, as an adult, unless you're for whatever reason in a family business with your dad, can you imagine having to have your dad on a business call with you?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, or unless you're estranged, can you imagine that your parents don't really know what you do for work? I mean, you've got an adult son and you've told me about what he does for work and what his business is.
What does he do?
He's like in landscaping, right?
Yeah, he owns his own landscaping company.
I know this.
Stephanie listens.
And so, but you guys, and I think for most adult kids, my parents know exactly what I do, and I ask them for advice, and I'm like, okay, what do you think about? I mean, not exactly what I do as far as the law firm. There are confidentiality rules, but especially with like trolleys and other stuff, they have a general idea of what I'm up to, and if suddenly I like came into $5 million.
Mom and Dad's gonna know.
We might be going on a family vacation or something, right? Or I'm driving a new car or something. They've got a decent idea of what I'm up to in my life.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, Hunter was spending time with the big guy.
Yeah, and Joe popping in on those money phone calls to talk about the weather. Come on, man. That's like a 4-year-old with cookie crumbs coming out of the corner of his mouth, standing there with his hands behind his back going, "No, Mom, I didn't take any cookies." That's exactly what that is. And now we have apparently a letter from Joe Biden to Devin Archer. We want to get into that. We will read the contents of that letter.
My parents have never written a personal letter to anybody in my business life, though.
My dad has never sent a personal letter to one of my friends or associates either.
Weird.
You start to see it. And then when you hear the contents of this letter that was presented on Tucker on Twitter last night, you'll get the drift of what we're talking about. That is Stephanie Bell. She is a partner in Ellinger Bell. She owns the trolley company in downtown Jefferson City, and she hangs out with us here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Good morning. There's Mr. Brian Houseworth.
It's good to see you.
Want to get into some things before we get into this letter. So we're getting reports of as much as 7 inches of rain, like at Chamois, 2.3, Eagle Knoll, almost 4 in Russellville. So you get the idea.
Yes.
Flash flood watches and warnings are going to be in effect. Road closures, anything like that, please let us know. It's in the typical areas, but I wanted to go to this this train crossing.
Yes.
Last year, obviously, story making national news headlines, and we apparently we know a cause.
That's right. There has been an NTSB report, and I interviewed Congressman Graves in March, and he kind of alluded to this. I knew he had some details he couldn't share with me because he kind of hinted at some things, but basically what the NTSB is saying in this report is that a grade crossing design contributed to the horrific deadly collision. 3 passengers were killed. The dump truck driver, Mr. Barton, was killed. 146 passengers and crew were killed as well. 2 very quick things, Brandon, about the report. It says the steepness of the road grade at this crossing was 13 times the maximum slope recommended by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. And it says the angle of the crossing intersection was 30 degrees sharper than the lower limit of the range. That is by all means dangerous. I knew it. I've been up there. I know those and I got to tell you, there's many more that are very similar to this. And Congressman Graves, there's many, many more that are very similar to this. So the NTSB is going to be in Jefferson City. The chair herself, Federal Railroad Administrator with Governor Parson. It's a big deal to have them 3. They're going to have it at the Amtrak station press conference at MoDOT in Jefferson City. And my only question right now is, I know the governor's going to announce record funding. I believe believe it's $50 million. Is that enough? Because Congressman Graves told me he was trying to get some more federal money in. Quite frankly, I'm a little surprised the congressman is not at this. At least he's not scheduled to be, because I believe he still may be in Washington. But it is, it's just after reading this, remember, all these people that got killed, there were all sorts of lawsuits here, but now we are seeing that it was the design of the crossing that apparently led to that. So that is where we are.
And then today, the governor signed some money saying we need to fix some of these railroad crossings. And these and here's what's interesting. Because, listen, you live in Jefferson City, almost 50,000 people. You live in Columbia, almost 130,000 people in city limits. Fulton, you live in those cities. And I'm guilty of this. I don't realize some of the challenges that face the rural areas. I get it with the ag and the drought, and now too much rain.
Because you a city boy.
Because I'm a city boy, man. I went to a county fair last weekend. I don't know how many years it's been since I've been to a county fair. Smelled the.
Did you do okay?
Yeah. I love the animals.
Didn't accidentally step in anything.
Didn't step in anything. Unlike we're going to be doing probably here on the show this morning.
Oh, we've already done that.
So appreciate that. But the challenges with internet access in those rural areas, everybody's got internet.
No, they don't.
They don't. There's parts here at like northern Boone County. There's a county commissioner in Boone County, Janet Thompson, who has detailed numerous times, like sometimes when I got to do business, I have to leave the house and go to a restaurant and pull up on the high side of the parking lot so I can get a thing.
That's right.
So it's some of those things we think, we've all got it good, and that's not always the case.
Well, and that's just it. And the fact of the matter is that it's not just Boone County, it's Columbia. DeCarlin Seawood says there are many people here in Columbia that don't have internet access. The director of the Missouri Department of Agriculture listens to our show every morning. She stays in Jefferson City when she's down at the Booker T. Washington building. Chris Chin, our friend from Department of Agriculture, she farms in Clarence. She has to go to the McDonald's in Monroe County in I believe it's Macon, and do her work because she can't get internet access. So it is an issue. The bottom line is this is not the only railroad crossing. There's many more very similar to it, and people blamed everybody else. The reality is, read the report. You'll be able to see it's the railroad crossing itself.
All right.
That's outlined plain and simple.
There's Mr. John Marsh.
Good morning.
Producer Han is here.
Howdy ho.
My name is Branden Rathert. Okay, last night, Tucker. His show is called Tucker on Twitter, and you can see it on X. He's interviewing.
That's 1X.
1X.
One.
X.com is the website. By the way, we can't vouch for what happens when you type in X.com. Tucker.
It takes you to Twitter.
Okay.
It does?
If you type in X.com?
Okay. I think I saw that he had been sitting on that website for a long time.
So so on his show last night, he's interviewing Devin Archer, and there is a letter that he shows, and apparently it's signed, and there is a little bit. It's a typed note letter, but then Joe apparently writes down a personal aspect to this note.
Yeah, and it's like I've gotten these letters before where they just write something extra at the bottom. Usually it's a fundraising solicitation from my university, but Joe says, "Happy you guys are together."
So before that, he says, "Dear Devin, I apologize." Apparently from Joseph R. Biden Jr. I apologize for not getting a chance to talk to you at the luncheon yesterday. I was having trouble getting away from hosting President who? The president of China. I hope I get a chance to see you again soon with Hunter. I hope you enjoyed the lunch. Thanks for coming. Sincerely, Joseph R. Biden Jr. And then the handwritten part.
And then he says, "Happy you guys are together."
Which is also interesting. We talked about the bromance between Hunter and Devin. Now, I do have to say this. Don't get mad, but Tucker ain't always been completely honest. And that's come out in courtrooms. The judge has even said, and this was not the Dominion case. This was another case. Judge said, now people understand when you tune into Tucker, you know it's not all true. A judge said that. So, but we have a picture of the letter, and I'm sure nobody could type this. You can't duplicate this, can you? I'm guessing it's true. So then Tucker, afterwards, he asked Devin, so what about this letter?
Listen, it was kind of the beginning of our partnership, and he was thanking me and thanking Hunter, I think, at the end of the day for bringing this idea of this government regulatory strategic advisory business into the private equity world. And I think he was excited about the prospects for Hunter. And, he was just thanking me. I think it was a nice gesture.
Yeah. For sure. Very polite. It gets a 10 on the etiquette scale. But he's a vice president of the United States, and he's talking about foreign business deals with you and thanking you for that.
I think, again, it goes back to my earlier point I think I hit the jackpot in finding the regulatory environment or company that can navigate right to the top. But, obviously, as time was told, being a little bit too close to the sun ends up burning you.
The sun being Joe, and now he says he's getting burnt. So apparently there is a letter from Joe to Devin.
It's weird.
It is, and again, and I hate to be, because I know every talk show in America right now is probably saying, how come the national news outlets aren't covering it? It's on Tucker, on Twitter. I thought pretty interesting as Trump gets ready to make his appearance in a courtroom today. Coming up, we're only 5 days. There's a vote in Cole County regarding Jefferson City library tax. Former Jefferson City Mayor Tom Rackers is going to be joining us, and he's going to be talking about why he is going to be voting no. We had the folks on from the library last week. They were here talking about why they think you should vote yes. Matter of fact, if you would like to hear that interview, you can go to our websites, kwos.com or 939theeagle.com. And I think it was Tuesday's show, 7 o'clock hour, you'll be able to hear that interview. Also coming up this morning, we're going to be doing What's Hot with Hannah.
It's a Taylor Swift story.
Yay!
I know Brandon and John are going to be so excited.
I think we get to sing along.
5-ish, which means it's
7:26.
No, it's not. 7:25. Let's do What's Hot with Hannah.
Come on, man. Just let me have this one.
Gold star for Branden today.
For doing what he's supposed to do. I don't know if that's the gold star worthy, but
All right, you think I'm 20, I'm in my 20s or something.
rude.
But accurate.
I just know that you were excited to talk about Taylor Swift, and I know that John shares that sentiment. He texted me and said, "Oh my gosh, so excited for 7:25-ish to talk about Taylor Swift." T-Swizzle. Now, unless you've had your head under a rock, you probably have heard that she is on this massive concert tour. It's called the Eras Tour, and she is basically doing songs from every album that she's put out so far.
And I want to say real quick, I want to interject this. Like, there have been stories in national news outlets, including conservative outlets, about the positive impact on economies, not just those. We saw what happened here in Missouri last month, but the positive, I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up.
Right.
Oh, they've seen a bump.
It's
Not
huge.
only like restaurants and hotels, but also the sequined dealers, I think, with all the outfits.
Well, and just a couple weeks ago, she was in Kansas City at Arrowhead. And one of the cool things about this tour is when she comes into a city, she's actually doing 2 nights of concerts. So in a way, it's almost like double the economic benefit in each of these cities. But she's making headlines specifically for her Seattle concert that she had last weekend. And basically, scientists have found that the impact of the stadium essentially caused a small earthquake.
Oh, I saw this.
It caused seismic activity that was equivalent to a 2.3 magnitude earthquake. And seismologists, big word of the day. Where's my gold star? Thank you very much.
Seismologist is the study of size?
No.
Well, it's a study of mologists.
Gotcha.
Does your earthquake insurance cover that? Like,
if you live next to the concert venue doing a Taylor, and there's an earthquake and there's damage to your home because of the Taylor Swift concert, does your insurance cover that?
call your lawyer, apparently. I wonder what that contract looks like.
But they've already nicknamed it the Swift Quake, and it's being compared to a 2011 Beast Quake at the same stadium where Seahawks running back Marshawn Lynch had a postseason touchdown and the crowd went wild. But this is 0.3. That earthquake was only 0.3 on the seismic scale, and Taylor did 2.3.
Sounds like a flaw in the stadium's design.
Well, I know it's apparently, John, isn't that like that is the, you talk about NFL stadiums and fan bases, that's that in Arrowhead?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much those two?
Pretty good, pretty loud, pretty raucous.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Taylor Swift concert things that's happening right now is, and I'm Dave Portnoy of Barstool had like a jacket that he wore to one of the really early like concerts, and they're calling it Sisterhood of the Traveling Swiftie jacket, and it's like gone to like almost all of the concerts, and they're actually mailing it across country, and like random people you're not paying for it. I don't think, you're just like sharing it, and I guess they're promoting that maybe at the very end they'd give it to her, but it's like this traveling jacket that's just like, it's a sweet like memento, and I think, how cool do you think you are if you're wearing that?
5 days from now, folks in Jefferson City going to the polls regarding library.
It's on them, you know. We just got to work it out, man. You know, it's life.
I love that. So that's a dude. His name is Darren Fletcher. He was recently chatting with KOMU Channel 8, and he's a writer of the Como bus system, which has changed names and routes just this week. Some big changes. You know how much it costs to ride the bus in Columbia?
Quarter?
Nothing. It's free.
Oh.
I mean, not for you. You pay for it. And Hannah, she pays for it.
It's totally free?
Yeah, it's free.
Huh.
I mean, it's not free.
Have you ever ridden? I've ridden it once. I rode it once in law school.
I've never ridden. They're always so packed. I can't ever get onto one of those buses because there's...
No.
I rode the Mizzou Loop when I was a student on campus. But...
Yeah, I rode it to a Mizzou game.
Okay. I love what this guy is saying because they've changed it and people say, oh, well, it's free. It's not free. We're all paying. We may as well stand at the bus stop up there at the shops at Broadway at 63 and Broadway, and everybody's standing in that bus stop. Here's $1.50. Here's $1.50 because that's what we're doing. We're paying for it. They can't figure out. The Missourian this week did an incredible job of detailing. I don't know if that was their intent, but detailing all of the problems that they have had while we continue to pay for it, while it fails, and it's a major expense. But they keep trying. We can't figure it out. But I appreciate that's a dude riding the bus, and he's saying, you heard him say, he says, it's not the city's responsibility. It's not the taxpayers' responsibility for me to get around town. That's not up to you. And I love that he's
really improved.
Field trip. Yeah. Let's go on you're all about getting your money's worth, Brandon, I think. And you want to get your gas tax money back, you better go ride that bus and get your money's worth.
$43.
I don't know. The city has at least one or two all-electric buses, and I think that those are, something we should be investing in.
And those are cheaper, right? Gosh. And listen, and here's the thing, and I'm not talking about specific people in leadership
Sure you are.
In Columbia, because it's been going on for years. It's that mindset, voters in Columbia, they put these people into office and they've done it for years. Matter of fact, I'll never forget one of the best moments in local government history in mid-Missouri. Former Carl Scala, who was ousted by a black, gay, cross-dressing, self-described hairstylist after a runoff absolute tie vote, even said when they were talking about roll carts, Carl Scala said in the city, we've been dealing with this for years and we can't. Yeah, you're right, Carl. You're absolutely right because it's the mindset of the people and who they vote for. It might have a Scala name on it. It might have a Pat Fowler name on it. It's the same set of bad ideas, and people can't figure out even this Missourian story about we don't know what the hell's going on in 10 years. Oh, I got to be careful. We have a young child here in the studio this morning. Sorry about that.
Don't talk about John Marsh like that.
Yeah. Welcome into the show. And we're going to talk about more of your taxpayer dollars here shortly. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
That's Mr. Brian Houseworth.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you.
And real quickly, weather looks like rain. So we've had flash flood watches, warnings. In fact, those should be coming to an end a couple hours from now. No,
we got them. They've been extended until the 9 o'clock hour. They were going to be in the 7 o'clock hour, so they've extended that. Brandon, KWS.com, 939theeagle.com. I wanted to encourage everybody to look at the map that I put up, the graphic on our website, because it tells you exactly where this heavy band is. Kind of a narrow area. Ashland is also now receiving reports of very heavy rain, so we've got some reports of some flooding in Ashland, but the two biggest areas would be New Bloomfield and also Chamois. And quite frankly, even though we have had heavy rain in Columbia, it is not under the warning right now that southern Boone County is, and also southern Callaway. So Montauk and Osage still under warnings, and they will remain in effect till past 9 o'clock, and they could be extended.
Reports. Was this official in Chamois, 7 inches?
Yes,
that's official.
I talked to the National Weather. That was Kevin Deich who told me that this morning. He's their chief meteorologist in the morning, and he said 6 to 7 inches. Now, he said they were dealing with flooding. He didn't have specifics on what kind of flooding, but yes, and there were some road closings. But yes, that comes directly from Kevin, who, he's as high up as you get at the NWS in Weldon Springs.
There's producer Hannah.
Hello.
There's Amelia Bell.
Howdy.
That's the young child in the studio, and I'm using foul language. Apologies. Stephanie's daughter is hanging out with us.
Good morning, Amelia. Good to see you.
I'm Branden Rathert. Welcome in. So 5 days from now, a vote, Cole County, regarding the library, and I think timing is interesting for several reasons on this. You go to the website, Mid-Missouri or the Missouri River Regional Library, and they have all the details. regarding Proposition Libraries. As a matter of fact, they were kind enough to join us on the show last week, and they talked about why they think that this should be passed. Now we bring in former Jefferson City Mayor Tom Rackers, and he says he's voting no. By the way, also in the studio, former professor Chris Baker is joining us on the show. Tom, I want to start with you. So you're telling us you're voting no on this library tax coming up on Tuesday. Why is it that you're voting no?
Well, thank you, Brendan. We aren't opposed to the library or improvements at the library, but this looks more like a wish list than a needs list. And that's not the big issue. The big issue, it has no sunset, so it goes on forever. So my children and grandchildren will be paying this for their lifetime. Let me ask you this. I just happened to, in the Jefferson City News Tribune, I think this came out on Tuesday, letter to the editor from somebody named Melva Fast. And I always appreciate when people write letters to the editor. Here's what I think. But Melva writes, former Mayor Tom Rackers usually ended his public comments by saying, quote, Jefferson City is a great place to live, work, and raise a family. And then she talks about some of the things that you did. It sounds like in very glowing terms, but in effect trying to utilize your name to say this is why I think you should vote in favor of this. How does that strike you, sir? Well, Melva's a wonderful person. She was a great employee of the city, and it was a shame that she had to leave for another job. And I respect her opinion. I respect everybody's opinion. But my opinion is this is too much for too long. All right, our guest this morning here on the show, former Jefferson City Mayor Tom Rackers and former Professor Chris Baker. Chris Wood.
Chris Wood, yeah.
No Baker.
Crunch the numbers for us on this, gentlemen. If we read the ballot language, it says sell the 20 cent per $100 of assessed valuation, go up to 35 cents. You look at that at the outside, it sounds pretty reasonable. Talk to us.
Well, there's a couple things that I noticed about that. I remember 35 cent a gallon gasoline too. The issue is greater than that. It is based upon assessed property valuation. On our local television network this morning, there was a realtor that talked about the cost, the valuation of homes has gone up 60% in the last 3 years. Meaning if you had a $150,000 home, now it's assessed at $250,000 home. And so that's one of the issues with it. The tax is just the personal property tax, which rests upon retirees, fixed income people, meaning that this goes on forever. I've just said it's a tax that's too much for too long. My great-grandchildren will still be paying that 2.5% on personal property. It goes in perpetuity. I'm in favor of a library and improvements. I just think we need to look at it from better funding sources and look at other ways to do that. I appreciate the work of all the committees in doing that. Comes down to that. Teaching in college, I taught for several years. Students hardly look at a book anymore. They don't go to a library to research. The new word for research, that is called Google it. And as a result of that, we're finding those kind of things are just going away. They looked at making the library 60% bigger. That's a pretty good sized building. But a lot of it's not library. It's meeting rooms and things like that, which I understand those kind of things, but I think it just goes too far. High schools, junior high schools, they don't use books anymore. They use computers. I don't think we really understand what the result of this technical computer age is going to end up. I don't know what libraries will look like in 5 to 10 years because the fact they won't store books. They'll store digital information. So I look at it those ways. I'm just opposed to the approach, and that is this tax. For like me, a retiree, it goes up. The school district is going to come back again. We hear them talking about our schools are all full again. We're going to have to come back and come up with more money for that. So I think we need to back off on this, say no, and take a little longer look at just exactly where we're at and where we're going to end up if we do something like this. I don't like the idea of putting a 2.5% increase on our children and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Former Mayor Rackers, I have a question for you. It's great to have both of you with us, by the way. And I do want to point out this not only increases personal property taxes, but we should also point out it does increase real estate taxes. And I have not seen that reported anywhere. But I mean, that is what it would do. Mayor Rackers, thanks for coming in, and Chris, you as well. The last tax levy, this is what the supporters will argue, including the people that are on the committee. They say the last tax levy paid for the current building was passed in 1964, almost 60 years ago. Mayor Rackers, how do you respond to that?
Well, Brian, good question, and thank you.
Thank you.
Our assessment is done, every couple of years? Mm-hmm. When our property values go up, they receive more money. They have been receiving more money all along, a lot of money. And, let's look at this as who's it going to affect? And I'm hearing, it's only going to affect the people that can afford it. No, that's not true. People that don't own property, don't have personal property, are going to pay more when they go out and buy products. For example, if a cattle rancher has his cattle, his property tax and real estate is increased, he's going to pass that along. It gets to the Walmart where we go to buy it, they're going to pass that along. Everybody is going to pay this, and they're going to pay it forever.
Thank you. Thank you both.
And then two final questions before we let you go. We've got like 1 minute here. The homeless around the library, that's an issue, and that's not an issue like we're creating. That's what people in Jefferson City are talking about. Can you address that issue for like 30 seconds, please?
Yeah, nobody has a problem with the homeless. The homeless, they're in need of care. They're in need of professional care. We have homeless that have mental issues. We have homeless that have addiction issues. Librarians aren't trained to take care of that. We need to get those to the people that are trained to take care of it and get those people the proper care.
And the other question is, I know you talked about your distaste for this. Is it the amount that they are asking for or just the whole premise?
The biggest thing is it doesn't sunset.
10-4. All right, our guest this morning here in the show, former Jefferson City Mayor Tom Rackers and retired Professor Chris Woods joining us on the show this morning. Anything else you gentlemen would like to add before we let you go?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we appreciate you gentlemen joining us this morning. Coming up about 5 minutes from now as we try to wade through things here this morning, we're going to be doing
75 points yesterday. The S&P lost 12. The tech-heavy NASDAQ declined 62.
How are futures looking ahead of the opening coming up a little over half hour from now? We're going to find out 8:25 with the Morning Bell business news with a little twist only Stephanie Bell can give you.
Well, the number one story on the Wall Street Journal did so well yesterday that we have to go back to the one today.
Yes.
But because it's also dragging Gen Z, in that a lot of employers are not happy with their new hires of 2023, and we'll tell you why.
And then I think, so Randy Tobler, he hosts the Randy Tobler Show weekdays 4 to 6 here on the radio station. He's got to be joining us. I think one of the things we might talk about, too, and this has been actually going on for a while, but why Americans are not going back to church. That's something we'll be doing. Randy Tobler, he's here at 8:10.
And that would be all, except for this.
That would be all except for this with John Marsh. What do you? So far, so good. Everybody feels okay about this. It's something brand new, and we're only telling you because you're a member of the Wake Up Mid-Missouri family. And why what we do here affects you. You're good with it so far? Good. Everybody's good. What do you have for us today, John?
This is from the Apologies to Brian Houseworth Department.
Uh-oh. By the way,
are we ready?
Yeah, and we have a new nickname for Brian Houseworth. We should do that at 8:35. I had a new nickname for Houseworth after what he said on the show yesterday regarding armadillos.
Are we ready?
Ready.
A South Georgia man shot an armadillo, but he ended up accidentally wounding his mother-in-law when the bullet ricocheted off the mammal. Lee County Sheriff's deputies say 54-year-old Larry McElroy fired a 9mm pistol at the armadillo. Deputies say the bullet did kill the armadillo, but bounced off of him, hit a fence, went through the back door of his mother-in-law's trailer home and the recliner in which she was sitting, and hit her in the back.
Gosh.
Carol Johnson, McElroy's 74-year-old mother-in-law, suffered non-life-threatening wounds. A deputy said she was coherent and walking around afterwards. McElroy was about 100 yards away from the mobile home when he took aim at the armadillo. Just the circumstances, just all the way around, the whole situation was unusual, a sheriff's investigator told the TV guys. He said using a shotgun might have been a better idea, and his quote was, "I really think if you're going to shoot at varmints and whatnot, maybe use a shotgun with a bigger spread and a lot less range." The mother-in-law is recovering. Services for the armadillo to be followed by a barbecue, as far as we know.
Wow.
Now you know the rest of that story.
Wait, so is it safe to say that armadillos are bulletproof?
Apparently so.
But it still died? I guess that's what I don't get.
It gave it a heart attack.
Maybe a good thump on the head, but it didn't. I don't know.
So it killed the armadillo, but bounced off, hit the fence, went through the back door of the trailer home, and hit Grandma.
It ricocheted with vengeance.
It did.
So you had a bullet ricochet off an armadillo. Brian Houseworth had his car ricochet off an armadillo.
Pretty interesting. I hit one time.
Yeah. Well, we've never seen a live
What's
armadillo.
that sound like exactly?
Oh, terrible.
Can you?
It sounded like artillery shells were being fired off under my car.
Oh.
I woke everybody up at the Capitol Plaza Hotel in Jefferson City when I hit that thing. It was in 2020. National Guard was staying there. So, yeah, it was very embarrassing.
Maybe he was onto something.
Oh, goodness.
You use a pistol to take him out, you risk hitting your mother-in-law, you just mow him down. All you do is wake up a bunch of National Guardsmen in the middle of the night.
With a Kia.
I would kill for like a selfie dash cam from that moment when Brian Houseworth ran over the armadillo.
So we asked, and there's more to this story that we did not even get to cover yesterday.
Like your cat story?
The cat. Have you ever has anybody ever hit a skunk?
No.
Woo! If you have, seriously, 874-9390. 874-9390. How's
Again, just to underscore, so notable that every time the Hunter Biden situation and the corruption makes the headlines, an indictment seems to drop. June, July, August.
But I can't help but notice the calendar here. Every one of these indictments that's come down, or the superseding indictments from Jack Smith, has always followed very bad news for Joe Biden. Whether it is the bribery allegation contained in the FBI's FD 1023 form, the next day the Mar-a-Lago indictments dropped. It's the collapse of the plea deal for Hunter Biden in that courtroom. The next day the superseding indictment is dropped. And then this week we get Devin Archer's testimony about Hunter Biden and the Biden family's finances. The next day you get the January 6th case. It's always the next day. And I think people look at that and go, well, that can't be a coincidence.
Randy Tobler hosts the Tobler Show weekdays starting at 4 o'clock here on the radio station. Do you hear that? Because here's the question I asked when I heard, I'm like, oh, come on, that's just Fox speak. Do you think we should fact check the claims in that statement?
Well, I sure don't know the motives, Brandon, but it sure looks suspicious. Yesterday we talked about it. I made Brian Hansen put on the proverbial tinfoil hat that you have there in the studio, and then I made him take it off when I thought about it more, because I thought, well, maybe it's not just a conspiracy theory. I think there might be something there. I mean, the grand jury meets for, weeks and weeks and weeks. Why do these things have to come down on those pivotal times as a misdirection, a distraction? You got to ask yourself the question.
And it's going to be a big day today, Randy, on your show, because apparently the Devin Archer transcript was released minutes ago. So I hope you've got your reading glasses out, because I'm sure you'll have the full rundown for us here coming up.
I do. I was going to ask you, Stephanie, is there some kind of a way that an amateur can get some kind of like a minor law degree, like a master's in law understanding or something? I've spent more time reading briefs and indictments. It's amazing how these things keep rolling out. What do you think that there's? Are we at the precipice? I got to note: are we on the precipice of prosecuting free speech and free thought? I mean, we may be there, which is a frightening thing. I mean, I thought that was just Banana Republic world, but it may be coming to a country near us.
And that's the freaky part, man. We see these things. These things are really happening. You have the president of which people especially in Boone County, I'm flabbergasted. Everything that smart people said would happen is happening now that Joe is president. We said this, and you've got all these uber progressives, especially in the city of Columbia, for example, going, yeah, but, rainbows and unicorns, and he's a real friendly guy.
But I will say, I mean, Randy, you're right on. If you read that indictment, it does look like we're prosecuting free speech. But conservatives, I mean, it can't go unsaid that conservatives are doing the same thing from the right. And I've heard it locally from people who don't like the position of folks hosting events or doing other things, saying we shouldn't let these people do that kind of event because I disagree with it. And they don't understand the fundamentals of free speech. We've heard it from our folks about, for example, book banning and other things like that. So we've got to be, when we're talking about free speech, I mean, I think conservatives deserve some of the guilt or some of the blame as well on this assault on free speech.
And I think
I don't know. You think so? When it comes to for instance, the book banning. I mean, I think the Supreme Court established. I mean, who was the justice that said when you see obscenity, you know it? And when we're just, I think that when you're trying to maintain some kind of purity and, keeping kids away from things in a selective way, I don't know that that's, analogous. On the other hand, you're right. I mean, look, I think what you're really getting at eventually, ultimately here, Stephanie, is echo chamberism, right? We all want to stay in our little echo chambers. We want to have our little clusters of, of goodness in the way we believe in our own ideology. And that can be a dangerous thing on either side. You're absolutely right.
Well, and when it comes down to book banning, I think the ultimate question is whether you think parents have a responsibility for knowing what your kids are or whether you're going to rely on the government to parent your kids for you. And I tend to agree. Yeah. I tend to be on the side of parents and not on more government.
Yeah, and that goes back to, I think, in personal decisions. Like we've played this audio from this dude who is chatting with KOMU Channel 8. He rides the Columbia bus system, the failing. It's been failing for 10 years. Missourian did a great story on this, and they've changed it up again this week, and it's free. It's free for the people who ride it, but for Brian Hausworth and Randy Tobler, you pay for those people to ride the buses in Columbia, but for the people that ride it, it's free. But this dude told KOMU Channel 8, he said, it's not the city's, and this dude's riding it, he's taking advantage of a free bus ride. And he's telling me, he said, it's not the city of Columbia's responsibility for me to get around to my job interviews and stuff. It's not their responsibility. I love that. Welcome to the show.
And my other favorite response to the buses is, well, it's not our money, it's the federal money. It's federal money. Guess
Again,
what?
A fundamental misunderstanding from a lot of progressive Democrats in Boone County, and they know it, that do not understand how things work. That's why we are where we are today. Welcome to the show. Wake Up Mid-Mo. There is Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
There's Mr. Brian Howes.
Good morning to you.
There's producer Hannah.
Hello.
Marsh is here.
Yes, sir.
My name is Branden Rathert. By the way, young child in the studio, so we're all minding our P's and Q's this morning. We're not talking about Hannah, but we do have a great story coming up at 8:25 in the morning bell about younger folks.
Oh, yeah.
And our guest, Randy Tobler. He hosts the Randy Oh, by the way, in Amelia, is not just some random 8-year-old in the studio. It happens to be Stephanie Bell's daughter. Randy Tobler.
She says she's 9.
9? All right.
Fact check.
Well, see, that's another thing that Amelia, I said you're 8. How old factually are you?
I'm 9.
9. All right. Thank you for the fact check.
It's like when we have Trey Fauché in studio, and you always try to say that he's not even old enough to drink yet. And he takes exception to that because he is, in fact, 21.
And I think you actually said that in a room, and he was holding a beer, and he's like, that guy's not even old enough to drink. And he's like, wait a minute. Don't
Lincoln
incriminate
days.
me.
That's right. It was Lincoln days back, and I'm up there, and Trey, not even old enough to drink yet, and he's holding up a can of Michelob and going, what are you talking about?
Pretty
dude?
sure he stood up, and he's like, I'm 21.
Welcome into the show. Randy Tobler is here. By the way, Brian Houseworth, and we're covering this at 8:35. Brian told a great story yesterday about a time he hit an armadillo. Yes. Beautiful story. And so we have a new nickname for Brian Houseworth. We're going to, and Brian doesn't know.
Okay, I don't know.
He doesn't know. It's coming up
that'd be great.
at 8:35. It's cool.
It'll be great. Hey, thank you, Branden. Randy, I do want to talk about something that I've been covering the last couple of days, and it was just horrific. I was in the courtroom for the arraignment of the Columbia murder suspect. 9 of the 11 murders in Columbia last year, 9 of the 11 involved domestic violence. This one with Savance Brewer that I covered just yesterday in court, domestic violence. He's accused of not only killing the woman, but shooting her in the head. She's 4 months pregnant. And according to the court document that I have in my hand, there were a 3- and 4-year-old child in the room as she was killed. He had just gotten out of prison last year. This will be his 3rd stint in prison because he's got to go back to finish the drug charges. He'll then go on trial for murder, potentially 4 prison terms that this person has served. Your reaction, sir?
I don't know what to say anymore about the domestic violence thing. I mean, look, I think it's just another extension of our pandemic of mental health problems that we have in this country, whether it's relatively minor and fleeting ones like anxiety and the blues that everyone should have if they're a normal human being, or whether it's prolonged, desperate despondency. Sometimes it's isolation that, of course, leads to this. But the pandemic helped none of this. But, Brian, we've got a cultural problem in this country, and we've got a problem with commitment. We have a problem with, I think, people becoming so isolated into themselves and being able to create their perfect worlds on their social media and looking at everyone else's beautiful life and wondering about theirs. And then you get into real life situations and you just don't know how to cope. It probably starts now with our young people when they're exposed to this perfect world that they create. And then you get into the real world. Oh, my gosh, I don't think I ever learned how to cope. My teachers didn't let me have that spat on the kindergarten playground, which was probably a healthy thing for us to all go through because we have to protect the little snowflakes. And then look what happens. You follow that through. Oh, and don't let me forget that the Pew Research study out just said that 25% of Americans over 40 have not been married, and a large majority of those say they are not going to get married. Our marriage-less rate, which means a commitment for God and your friends and your family, has dropped precipitously. Commitment often staves off that fight escalating because, hey, I made that commitment. I have something to do. So you see, this is a multifactorial problem. I don't think it's a law enforcement problem necessarily. It's a cultural problem. And we just have to really recalibrate the way we manage our relationships and our and our attention to the importance of families in this country.
And when was the last time you heard somebody use the phrase multifactorial issue? Our guest this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri is Randy Tobler.
I've been reading too many medical studies overnight. I'm sorry.
Tobler's joining us here on Wake Up Mid-Mo.
Randy, I know you talk so much on the air and looking at who the presidential nominees are going to be. I guess Ron DeSantis kind of caught it this week for what they kind of called his underwhelming response to the latest charges against Trump when he sort of talked about, I'm against the weaponization of government. Do you think he's hurting himself with some of these comments?
You know, it's interesting to watch what the other candidates have done. It's tough enough to be a candidate, I would think, much less when you've got a Leviathan, a president with such powerful brand recognition and support among his base, and increasingly among other Americans that look at this objectively and say, wait, this doesn't pass the smell test. So, how do you calibrate that? Do you sort of just pay homage to it and say, yeah, he was persecuted, but yeah, he shouldn't have gone there? Or do you just say all in? Yeah, the guy is being persecuted, but let's talk about what I need to talk about, the policies I want to espouse. It's a tough road to try to make any headway in this environment. Ironically, Trump's strength just keeps growing. It's an amazing political moment in our history.
All right. By the way, I do want to interject here a little bit. We're starting to get some snippets of the Devin Archer testimony before Congress earlier this week. Devin Archer says Hunter used Joe Biden as defensive leverage for foreign business partners. This is what transcripts are showing. He told congressional investigators that Hunter used then Vice President Joe Biden as defensive leverage. We're going to have more through this as this unfolds this morning. Tobler, 30 seconds. What you got coming up on your show this afternoon?
Well, speaking of that transcript, Thursday afternoons are Jennifer Bukowski time, so we'll be covering that at 5. And then there's some issues with short-term housing, short-term rentals in Columbia. David Stokes from Show Me will be talking with us about that. Should be fun.
I was chatting with City Councilman Don Waterman about this the other night at the retirement party for now retired Columbia Police Chief Jeff Jones. It's coming up this afternoon. Randy Tobler, 4 o'clock. Here on the radio stations with love. We're running out of time, and I got to move forward, but Randy apparently has a story about hitting a skunk one time, and 8:35 we'll talk about Brian.
Oh, it's better than that. We'll talk about it next time.
All right, that's coming up. Randy Tobler, check him out this afternoon. Coming up, 8:25, Morning Bell Business News with a little twist only Stephanie Bell can give you.
You remember what that Urkel saying was? What did they always say?
I don't know, but he talked like this, but I don't remember the saying.
He said,
Did I do that?
Yes. Well, now Gen Z is saying, how do
8:25. It's time for the Morning Bell Business News. Got a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you.
We talked to economist Aaron Hedlund this morning, and he said, the markets weren't reacting too positively to all of the debt news and everything going on, and our downgrade this week. And we saw that yesterday, and again today, the futures are down pretty significantly.
As a matter of fact, Hedlund, Dr. Hedlund, chief economist with the Show Me Institute, did economical stuff in Washington, D.C. during the Trump administration. He joined us, and he might be worth checking out on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri On Demand anytime, all the time, KWOS.com, 93.9, theeagle.com. He offered some hope, by the way, but he makes the economy and how it's affecting us, makes it real simple, but then offered some hope, too.
He did. Well, there is not a lot of hope if you're trying to employ people these days. And the number one article on the Wall Street Journal today is not about vacation. It is about new hires in 2023. And not only is it hard to just find people, but find people with the right skills. So the article kind of walks through. We've seen the drop in education, in the testing scores and everything else. And it's just folks coming out of school aren't as prepared as they probably should be in basic skills. And some of that's could be blamed on the pandemic, but at the same time, employers are saying they're also just not motivated. And I feel this quote in my bones. Yeah. It's this was at a zoo, and they said they're just trying to get them to take some initiative, get off their phone, engage with the visitors. This is from Laura Davis, the director of development at the zoo. She said her employees weren't held accountable for things like finishing their homework at school, and so they're just have no motivation. She said they're not looking to be productive if they're not told what to do. If someone isn't managing every second and keeping them busy, their inclination is not to self-identify what they can do. It is to do nothing.
And again, it's that you're not responsible for that. It's okay. Let's make this as soft as a landing as possible for you. And it's been happening for years. And now businesses, and again, you talk to these small local business owners. We've been hearing this for a while. And it is consistent. The most consistent thing that I hear when it comes to these folks hiring, especially this younger generation, and this is consistent. I hired them. They came in for a day, and then that was it. And they don't call. They don't have the responsibility. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the whatever, the proper etiquette to say, hey, I did it for a day. I'm just at least letting you know. Call me a creep for just showing up for one day and bailing out, but I'm at least going to let you know, because as a small business owner, you need to make some accommodations for tomorrow to help your business. They don't have that.
Or just showing up on time, like leaving for long lunch breaks, leaving early. I mean, I've heard just locally horror stories of, and then the amount of time you invest in doing interviews, selecting someone, onboarding them, and then it just not working out is devastating. And, I think it's incumbent on our, educational institutions, of which we have many. So Dr. John Mosley, if you're listening, all of my friends at Mizzou, if you're listening, we're counting on you all, and I know they're doing hard work, and I know they've got a lot to come back from COVID. But I think for a long time, and this isn't something new, for a long time, I think employers have been criticizing higher ed of actually teaching people real skills, not just book smarts, but actual application.
Soft skills.
Yeah, but some hard skills too. But making sure that when they show up to the workplace, they're prepared. And I think they've come. I think they're working on it. I think there's still work to be done. And I think it's also incumbent on us employers to train well when we do get those new employees.
And one of the things that's unfortunate, because we always use producer Hannah as an example, 23-year-old recent-ish college
Have you talked to Jack Smith's investigators?
I'm not going to get into that.
Okay.
Uncomfortable. Former AG Bill Barr, CNN. Did you talk to that committee? I'm not going to get into that. I wonder if he knew that question was coming. Welcome into the show. Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I'm Branden Rathert, Stephanie Bell, John Marsh, Brian Houseworth, who has a new nickname on the show. We're getting ready to unveil that. And Amelia Bell is joining us this morning. Amelia, good morning.
Howdy.
Amelia is 9 years old, and she listens to the radio, and she says, and we get this from kids a lot or younger people, oh, yeah, we listen to your show all the time. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. But then when they say, well, I listen because I heard producer Hannah say this thing about vacations and tips the other day, and they're like, oh, you really are listening. But Amelia, I know, listens. What is your favorite commercial that you hear here on the radio station?
So there was this commercial, and it was like, whenever a restaurant closes, this is my reaction. Well, that sucks. They had good steak. Whenever 3 central banks close overnight, my reaction is, ah!
And I know that commercial. And I think it's Jesse Kelly that's the spokesperson for, I think
yeah. Well done. It's really well done. I think it's a national ad.
Yeah.
It is.
Fox.
It is.
And I think it's, and I don't know if it's for gold or something.
And at the end it was like, 4 numbers. And then it was like, GOLD.
Are you a plant from, there was a new study out that I read, a national study out yesterday that they surveyed a bunch of folks who heard advertising, and they checked video ads and audio ads and radio ads and podcasts and TV and all of that. And they said the ads that stuck with people the most were radio ads. And we were just reading about that. And they stick in it. And I hear the little jingles too occasionally in the car. They like to sing the song.
And that's something to keep in mind as a point kind of privilege here. Yeah, people, if you're a business, I mean, people like Echo Water Systems in Jefferson City, they know this. People like Graff & Sons and people like Heath Higgins, they know this, and that's why they do their marketing on radio. They happen to do it here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri and on these radio stations. But they know this, and they continue to do it. How long have you been hearing Echo Water Systems, John, on the radio? Right?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Years.
Right? And why have they been on for so many years? Because it works. It's radio. 874-93. Gosh, that's how.
But there's something. I mean,
true.
so
It's
I'm not
true.
and I'm not a radio person, so I can I can talk a little bit more openly.
Stephanie, you've been on the radio for almost 2 years. You're officially a radio
person.
I'm not, but I went to a conference and I heard people talking about it, and they said, one of the things that's really cool is that if you put up a billboard or you do something in print, like you can't go back and unprint that, right? And they said, one of the great parts about radio is if something's fastly changing in the world, or you want to change up your ad, it's pretty easy to just go in and change up your audio as opposed to, take down and re-put back up, something that's in print. And I thought,
that's right.
Even though now you guys would claim me as a radio person, I'm like, I never thought about that, but that's really an interesting point.
And Branden is spot on about the local businesses that step up and support KWS and in 93.9 The Eagle. We are very grateful. John Martin and Pro Pumping and Hydrogening, many others. I do agree with what you said about jingles. I still, in my head, remember the jingle from the Art Hack Buick commercial in St. Louis. Art Hack died in 1994. It was Jim Bolin. He was a meteorologist at Channel 4, and Art Hack, and I guarantee you there's got to be somebody out there, listeners, that will remember that. But it stuck with me, and it was a simple, come on down to Art Hack Buick and come on down and get the Art Hack price.
I hear the pest control jingle a lot.
Pest control. And to speak to the power of radio, I was at the Gasconade County Fair, and in between the cow barn and the pig barn, I ran into Mike Estes with Rosebud Tractor and Equipment. And I went up to Mike and said, hey, Mike, Branden and I hang out with John and Brian and Stephanie Bell and producer Hannah on Wake Up Mid-Missouri every morning. And we appreciate your support of what you're doing with the radio stations in Gasconade County. And he's like, Like his eyes lit up, not because he understands the power of marketing, what their business does in Rosebud Tractor and Equipment on these radio stations.
That's fabulous.
874, or you can call the business line. Gosh, this does sound like I'm.
I will say, I'll cite my source if you want to read more about that survey. It was up on talkers.com, which is kind of an insider radio thing. Yesterday, I think they had a link to some of those survey numbers.
And before we move forward, we have something kind of cool. We have a brand new nickname. For Brian Houseworth.
Yeah, watch what you wish for there, buddy.
Okay.
Do want to let you know this. So right now, so apparently we're getting some of the transcripts from Devin Archer's testimony earlier this week. Now, he was on Tucker on Twitter yesterday, and he gave Tucker a letter written, apparently, by Joe Biden. And we've been sharing, and it's a short letter. And he even went as far as to handwrite and kind of put a personal note on there.
Oh, well, yeah, the note said, I think I'm glad y'all are together. Basically.
And so here's what the note says. This is from Joe Biden to Devin Archer. Dear Devin, I apologize for not getting a chance to talk to you at the luncheon yesterday. I was having trouble getting away from hosting President who? President of China. And when I say President who, that's not WHO. Right. That's HU.
So imagine he is trying to get away from a foreign leader to talk to Hunter's buddy?
Mm-hmm.
That's even a bigger concern, but yes.
So a couple of quick excerpts, and Gary, obviously, he's sitting around digesting this right now. He's going to cover this Think Tank Thursday. Devin Archer apparently telling congressional investigators that Hunter Biden used then Vice President Joe Biden as defensive leverage to send the right signals to his foreign business partners. That's one of the things that we're learning. The value that Hunter Biden brought to it was having, there was the theoretical, there was corporate governance, but obviously given the brand, that was the value.
And again, I guess he told them, and we knew this was coming, but he put Joe Biden on speakerphone while meeting with business partners at least 20 times. Can you imagine being on a work call for Zimmer and being like, hold on, let me put my dad on the phone? Like, there's only one reason, because your dad's the vice president and because you can't do it, independently on your own. It's crazy.
I was going to say, is that the equivalent of having your dad co-host for the day?
The big guy he's coming in from Jefferson County, Missouri, the most conservative county in all of Missouri, and he's going to be hanging out with us. And again, the wording from the White House keeps changing. Steph Bell, first one I heard, definitely pointed out they're changing language.
Well, you have that never audio, because he said, I never knew about it. I never talked to him about it. I wonder, how would you not know anything if you were on the phone with the business people 20 times?
I did not know he was on the board of that company. I've never discussed my business or their business, my sons or daughters. I never discussed a single thing with my son.
So it keeps changing. It was, I'm not involved. I wasn't aware.
But now you're on the weekly business update conference call or something?
And Amelia, since we have a 9-year-old in the studio, I'm going to break this down for you, all right? So you follow along.
Okay.
So you understand. So when you vote, coming up in November of 20 whatever year it's going to be that you vote, you understand this stuff. That's what we try to do here on the show, explain these things so that even 9-year-old kids understand what we're talking about, okay? Here's what you need to know. Joe Biden's just a bad dude, okay? Is that okay, Mom?
Yeah.
All right. Joe Biden's a bad dude. These things, they matter. So that's what we're following right now. Some of the transcripts from that testimony earlier this week. Obviously, Gary, he's digesting this right now. We have a brand new nickname. Mid-Missouri loves Brian Houseworth.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. So this happened on the show yesterday, right? By the way, as we were hanging out with former Congresswoman Vicky Hart.
Pretty interesting. I hit one time.
Yeah. Well, we've never seen a live
What's
armadillo.
that sound like exactly?
Oh, terrible.
Can you?
It sounded like artillery shells were being fired off under my car.
Oh.
I woke everybody up at the Capitol Plaza Hotel in Jefferson City when I hit that thing. It was in 2020. National Guard was staying there. So, yeah, it was very embarrassing. Absolutely.
I just posted this clip to the Wake Up Facebook page. Also,
nice.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Nice. So you can go there and then share it with your friends. Every morning, 7:50, we do something called, and that would be all except for this, with John Marsh. John, what was your story this morning?
About the guy who shot the armadillo to kill it down in Georgia. The bullet ricocheted, went through the trailer home and hit his mother-in-law.
Oh.
And so
didn't do her any good.
I
but
like
she
how
recovered.
I like how Brandon said we do it every morning. We've done it every morning for the last 3 days.
Well, that's every
new.
morning.
Yeah, it's new.
It's new. You should check it out. It's really cool. John Marsh brings it to you. So he had a story about a bullet ricocheting off of an armadillo. You had a car that ricocheted off of an armadillo. How much did that jack up your car?
It did.
How much?
Well, I don't know the exact amount because I learned I pay pretty good money, but I want to make sure I'm covered. I pay comprehensive. And if you hit an animal, at least with my insurance company, they paid for everything except the hotel because my home at the time was, I think I was 44 miles from the Capitol Plaza Hotel, and they only would cover the hotel if I couldn't drive the car. I mean, the noise was horrendous. So was the armadillo screaming and crying? It was deceased. So yeah.
And then you drug it for those 44 miles underneath your car.
It happened on so it's probably about half a mile because it was actually fairly close to Capitol Plaza. I had to get somewhere that was safe, but thank goodness, and it made a ton of noise. Woke people up in the National Guard. They must have had some conference going on, and luckily they had a room available. But the insurance company did not pay for my room. I had to pay for which I didn't mind. But I told the people I can't drive that car. Situation is so it had to be hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars because it destroyed the bottom of the car.
Hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds, if not thousands.
I mean, but really, you need to call this guy who tried to shoot the armadillo and say, next time, dude, just get a Kia.
Yeah. It was a scary thing, but luckily, and there was cars behind me and on my side. I could not slow down. It was just there was nowhere to pull over, and it was rough. It was approaching the tri-level.
So we have a new nickname for you.
Brandon.
Yeah.
Can I say it?
Do you know what it is?
I think so.
Shout it out like you're. By the way, one of our guest co-hosts this morning is not the big guy. It's Amelia Bell. What's his new nickname?
I think it's Armadillo Killer.
Wow, okay.
Brian Houseworth, the Armadillo Killer.
Good job.
We love you, Brian.
We need an intro.
The Armadillo Killer.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Good morning. It's 7:03. I'm the Armadillo Killer. Our lead story this morning, heavy rains throughout mid-Missouri. All right, coming up, we're going to do some leftovers before we get into the Gary Nolan show. Why a North Carolina man is saying thanks to musician Post Malone after
Leftovers. Enjoy.
Some things we didn't get a chance to get to. Big one right now. Transcripts coming out from Devin Archer's testimony this week. And again, I get heartbroken. I get angry, and then I get heartbroken, and I feel like I've been kicked in the groin, punched in the stomach, whatever you want to call it. I think I'm putting my biases aside, Hannah. I really do. I believe this, John. Seriously.
I think the whole point of a bias is that you can't set it aside completely.
You could, yeah.
You have some self-awareness.
Yeah. But here's what I think. You have somebody who is accused, the guy who is the president right now, of doing some pretty dark things. He didn't put the country in danger. Understand, he put you in danger. Okay? This really is an important story. If Joe was using his name as vice president to foreign countries for political influence, that is pretty serious. It really is. And again, I hate it. Where are the national news networks on this? But they obviously are not covering it. Thank goodness. Pretty sure Gary Nolan's going to be all over us. One of the things we are working on. Marsh, what do you have for leftovers?
Kind of got a sad one from this week. A bolt of lightning hit the bell tower of St. John the Evangelist Catholic Chapel in Pettis County early Tuesday morning, caused a fire. Lightning hit the chapel in Boehner, that's south of Sedalia, shortly after 5 a.m. It caught fire. The church, built in 1883, burned to the ground.
Man, that's part of leftovers. Post Malone. Yeah, I dig Post Malone. I really do.
Name one of his songs.
Shoot, I don't know. I know the words.
Oh, I love that guy.
In my what are the
words to his song?
Stephanie's got 3 kids. My favorite one is Emily. Emily's my favorite.
The 8-year-old, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna be like Michael. That one. Anyhow, no, I really do. I like.
What was the one from the Spider-Man movie?
Sunflower.
Yeah, there you go.
I know that song.
Man, John Marsh had to assist you with Post Malone. Didn't have that one on my bingo card.
Anyhow, he's thanking Post Malone. Here's what happened. He's going to see Mr. Malone at a concert in North Carolina. There's storms. They've got to delay the concert. And he's kind of at the point. He's got his wife and kids at this concert. And he's like, hey, man, let's just go home because they're delaying the start of the concert. It's going to be too late. Of course, no. So they stay. And then they're heading home, and because of the weather and stuff, they had to stop and go to the bathroom. Dad's getting a little cranky at this point. You know the picture, John. It's 1978. It's a different concert, and Dad's smoking a cigarette, and he's got a window rolled down, and the kids in the back.
Don't make me stop this car.
So the kids, Dad, stop the car. Dad stops the car, pulls over at a gas station so the kids can go and pee. And this cranky dad goes, well, I'm going to spend some money on some lottery tickets. Sure enough. Won $100,000 because the Post Malone concert got delayed.
Cool.
I love
almost paid off the price of their tickets,
right? And it's I love that. What's a hearing or a phrase I hear all the time? It's like, if you want to make God laugh, whoever your God is, whatever your God is, if you want to make your God laugh, tell him what your plans are. Tell him, her, it, whatever. Tell him what your plans are for the day. And that'll make God laugh, because a lot of times there's a different plan in store. And I don't want to get, I'm not being religious as much as I am being spiritual here. But I think that's one of those great stories that exemplifies that point exactly. Also in Leftovers, do want to cover, obviously, some areas of flooding throughout mid-Missouri this morning. So be careful, be aware of that. For the most part, looks like the rain is past us until tomorrow. Feel good Friday. And let's hope, man, that Cole County Fair, man, tough. Last week, John, was too hot for some county fairs. This week, it's too wet for some county fairs. Somewhere, and there's got to be some balance. Be safe, be fun. Nolan, my dad's favorite show, Gary Nolan, is coming up. Nolan's next.